Hi everyone, welcome to ELI, the place where you get your daily dose of inspiration for entrepreneurship. And today we have with us Mr. Tony Sheldon, who is the co-founder of Communev. I'm sorry, a interest-based social network. Tony has been working on this venture since 2019 with his co-founder. Hi Tony, welcome to ELI.
Hi, Pia. How are you?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm great. I'm great.
So Tony, I would like to start with your introduction. Why don't you introduce yourself to our audience, please?
All right. Hi, everybody, or everybody who's watching this. This is Tony. I'm the co-founder of Commonev. As Pia said, we started this company last year around the end of 2019. I have two other co-founders in this venture. And we're basically building an interest-based social network where you can easily meet like-minded people based on your common interests. So we're making a platform for that.
Tell us more about Communev. What is it all about? What kind of reach we have, and what is the problem we are solving for the society?
All right. So I always tell about this that this is the 21st century, and you can easily now book cabs from your phone. You can easily book hot food right at your plate, all within within minutes, right? So that's very easy. But if you think about making connections, if you want to meet new people and make new connections with like-minded people with whom you can build long-term relationships, it's very difficult to do. There are apps to date. There are apps to consume a lot of content on the internet, but there's no good app to find connections easily. So that's why we started thinking about this problem. And last year we started some community based events, which was basically we chose an interest and we started doing events for these, and it slowly expanded to about 4 to 5 thousand community members. And that's when we thought, okay, we should take it to the next level. And now we're building a platform which is basically a website and an app. You can go and tell us what your interests are, and we have a matchmaking algorithm based on AI and ML, which would find you the best connections possible out there.
Okay. Um, Having said that, let me ask you, what is wrong with the current social networks? We have Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Quora, Reddit, all sort of platforms based on requirements. What is wrong? What is missing in all these platforms?
There are two good things and two good ways to answer this. Your first is that you mentioned what is difference between those social networks and us. First of all, they do not identify themselves as social networks, and that's where the huge difference lies. Most of them are social medias, social networks, although they try to add those connections and network buzzwords. But the truth or the reality and the truth of the matter is that if you go to LinkedIn, if you go to Quora, if you go to Facebook, if you go to any social media right now, the central point is the content feed, right? So if you go on Facebook today, the app is trying to get more consumption from you. If you go to Quora today, it's not about the people who are answering, it's about the answers themselves. It's about the questions. So Quora has a lot of programs to get more questions, to get more answers. And same goes for every platform. Every platform is trying to get more content on it, and then more consumption of that content. Famously, LinkedIn now copy the feature of stories, and now they have launched stories in India as well. So it gives you direction that these companies are not trying to help you find connections easily. If that was the case, you should be able to go to LinkedIn, go to Quora, go to Facebook, and click on a single button and find the best person out there to meet with you. The best person out there who would understand what you are trying to do in your life. You would understand your passion, would share your passion, who you could talk to openly. But that's not the case. You go to these platforms and you start consuming content. The only good way to make connections on these platforms is to either become a content creator yourself or to rely on luck. So that at one point you might see someone's content that interests you, and then you might find some likeness with them, and then you go on doing a conversation. That's the big difference with us. Our central point, our central focus is just connection. So the very first page that you open on our app when it will be launched would be the connections page. and everything on the platform would be to help you make connections. So we have a connections page where you can find the connections, and you won't even have to do any work. Just have to click a button, and a matchmaking algorithm would find all the good connections out there for you. We have a community tab where you can meet more people within the community, within the larger communities. And we have an events and activities tab where you can participate in events and activities around your city with these people to meet in real life.
Okay, I totally agree with you, Tony, when you say that the platforms have become more like news portals where you consume news or content or just anything with less focus on connections. But if you look closely, the platforms succeeded in initially when they started. They succeeded because of the people they brought in, because of the connections. In fact, connection has been the prime selling point of Facebook, LinkedIn, and all. Um, when you see at different platforms, I think LinkedIn is the mm, mm, only place where you can find productive engagements, productive connections. Otherwise, all other platforms are not very productive in terms of connecting with people. Having said that, I'm curious to know why these platforms have turned that way, why they have become more of a content platform rather than connections platform.
I think it's not something particular to just social media companies. It's a industry trend. So when people start companies, it's not generally to do something small. It's always to do something big. The vision is always very big, right? So as companies become big, they mature over time, and then their priorities change. So Facebook just started as a college campus networking platform, right? So you could, exchange status updates with the other people, see what their profiles are, right? That was the main selling point. You can know people, their bio, their information, and then share something with them, right? Um, and Facebook wasn't started to connect the world, but eventually that vision did come into the picture, and then they did that. They basically did connect the world at one point. But then the company matured. Then the priorities changed because at one point, once you have a billion users, 2 billion users, or 3 billion users, it's not anymore about what you can enable them to do, because the innovation basically at that point dies. To start doing minor improvement, and the minor improvement now is how can we get the user to spend more time on the app? How can we get them to open the app more? That's the basic goal, right? That's why now you've seen that since the past 5 or 6 years, like from when the Instagram and WhatsApp thing started, you might have seen a lot of competition has started coming in the foray for Facebook itself, right? They bought out Facebook, Instagram, sorry, and they bought out WhatsApp, but they couldn't bought out Snapchat, right? So we've got a lot of competition now in the form of TikTok, in the form of niche sites like Quora. You've got Goodreads, who is managed by Amazon. We've got a lot of companies that are covering different spaces that Facebook is ignoring right now, and that's what we think is happening in the whole social media industry right now. The industry has matured in a way that it's not innovating anymore, and now the innovation has to be done by somebody outside the industry, which are the startups that are growing up. So you'll see a lot of startups in the social media space which are very localized for their specific country. So India specific platforms like ShareChat, or now a lot of clones of TikTok. These are the future for India. And then you've got niche specific Goodreads for books, and then you've got TikTok for very short videos, and of course YouTube is already there. So you've got a lot of platforms which are for specific use cases only. And then you've got a third category which is based on community. So you've got specific community based social platforms. So you might know about Sheroes, which is a women-specific social platform. You got these people covering these spaces, and Facebook usage would drop down, would start decreasing, and it has basically plateaued right now. And over the next couple of years, over the next 4 or 5 years, I think it would start going down if they do not acquire anybody else.
Okay. Tony, I happened to go to your LinkedIn page and I saw a tagline, social media 2.0. Now, tell me what are the different aspects that a social media 2.0 should have from a user's point of view?
Right. Just segueing to this thing from the last answer. Um, as I said, the industry has matured. We're moving to now different requirements of users. So users do not just want to, get content. Now, a whole lot of users that have joined in the last decade or half are very new users and very mobile-centric users. They expect something different from the platform, and now is the time that they're maturing. They have spent a sizable amount of their life now on the internet. Now they know that internet is far more capable than when they started using it. They now know more about it, so they're expecting more from the platforms that they are spending their time on. So you'll see that the new users do not join Facebook, they join other social networks, right? That is their first social network. For our generation, for people who had the internet in the last decade, in the 2000s, beginning in the 2000s, Facebook was the very first platform they'll visit to, right? So those things are changing, and I think over time, as the space changes, as the users demand change, and as they understand that internet is far more capable in providing them good connections, real life connections that actually impacts their life, um, social media 2.0 revolution would happen.
Okay. Um, Tony, since you have spent so much time and understood the world of social media, now tell us what are some of the promising social media platforms coming up in Indian context. You have mentioned few names as well. I would like to know more.
Okay, I'm a little biased to give this answer, but Common App probably is the best one out there. And I wouldn't say any names because wouldn't be right on my part or to my co-founders or to my company. But India is still lacking behind in the kind of innovation or the quality of products that have to be at the world standards, right? So we've got products that are very Indian centric and for the Indian customer only. And ShareChat, which I think it's in news that it will be acquired by somebody. So there's talks about that ShareChat acquisition. Um, Google is going to probably acquire ShareChat. So we've got these platforms, but they're only made for India, and the quality, the expectations, and the kind of services they are providing to the users is also very Indian centric. Famously, ShareChat or Hilo, which is I think from ByteDance itself, has a WhatsApp share button, which is a very big thing for somebody to promote somebody else's platform on their app. Is a very big thing. So they've taken somebody else's logo and put it in the center of their app. That's a very big bet and can only work probably in India, because India is, I think, is the largest or the second largest user base for WhatsApp itself, right? So these things are there, and I think if people would try to make world-centric apps, world-centric social medias, then India's future would be there in social media. But social media is a kind of space where you either completely succeed or you completely and utterly fail. There's no center point of social media. You either get the whole market or you get nothing at all, right? You wouldn't see ShareChat's competition because ShareChat did it all. ShareChat took all the market, right? But ShareChat cannot and very hardly expand to other countries rather other than India, right? So you've got these limitations, and I think if there would be a social media in the future which would replace Facebook, there is a high chance it can be from India, provided the mindset of Indian entrepreneurs changes from just India to the entire world.
Okay. Um, let's get into your personal journey as an entrepreneur. Would like to know how it all started. When did you think of becoming an entrepreneur? When this idea came to your head?
Right, very quickly, this was a very like young age thing. I was like, I think in an eighth or ninth standard, eighth or ninth grade, or class, if you're a very Indian audience. Um, so that's when I thought, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur. The thing was that I wanted to do something different, and I think entrepreneurship is quite a different thing. Plus, it's very open. It's very free in terms of experimentation. You can start any kind of startup out there. You can do in secure tech, urban tech, you can do health tech, you can consumer products, you can do anything at all, right? So there's a lot of space to experiment with. Plus, even in your personal life, entrepreneurship helps you to explore a lot of things. You will see most of these self-improvement stuff out there on the internet or in the forms of books is almost all is written by entrepreneurs because they have enough time to spend on their personal improvements as well, and they're very experimentative in that. So I think that's why I chose entrepreneurship very early on. And the idea of this startup, I think it wasn't a eureka moment. I think 3 or 4 years ago, I started a music group with some of my friends, and we basically shared music in that. That's it, right? It was a kind of music community, and it slowly grew to like from 5 people to like 100 people, all naturally. And I think that was the beginning. We closed down the group, of course, but some years later, when I landed in Delhi, I wanted to meet new people. There was no alternative, and as necessity is the mother of all inventions, we started this.
Interesting. Now tell us, how did you find your team, co-founders, and how did you convince them to get started, do something that is not very certain, risky, and all.
Since this is the kind of podcast where you take advice from entrepreneurs, I would tell you what I did, and that is something you shouldn't do at all. So I started doing events, as I told earlier, interest-based community events early on my own, right? And I didn't intend to do, entrepreneurship in this scenario. I just wanted to do events because I wanted to meet some new people, right? And I didn't think that this would turn out to be a separate company. I was just experimenting, and I was actually on the side looking for some startup ideas to work on. And I was networking with a lot of entrepreneurs to see what was going on in the space. And eventually, I met both my co-founders in my events itself. So one of them landed in the event, started talking, he started helping out. It was all as a project thing, right? And a couple of months later, the third co-founder also came in the picture. First one was Akash Kumar, and the second one was Swapnil Arora. And Swapnil Arora also came to one of our events. We started talking. The convincing part, I think you shouldn't convince other people to join your startup. The only people you have to convince is probably the founding team members or the very first initial employees. So you're, of course, going to pay them very less, and yet you ask them a lot. So that's something where you have to convince them. For founders, it should be very natural, and most of the time, you should only start businesses with people you already trust, with people who are already your friends, because it would save you a lot of time, save you a lot of trouble in testing people out and trusting them or not trusting them. So my advice there would be to probably help somebody else in building their startup instead of recruiting for your startup. Because I'm pretty sure whatever idea you have, somebody else might also be having that or very nearby idea. So you can probably collaborate with other people and help them in building the business. And if you are going to build a business, take a lot of time in testing your co-founders. Take a lot of time when you join hands with them before taking investment. Spend a lot of time with them. Work on the project with building a business. So I worked with Akash, my first co-founder. I think it was 6 months before we had an idea that we are going to build a company. And even with Swapnil, I think we spent 4 or 5 months before understanding that he is going to be full-time co-founder. And that was the thing that took us a lot of time. We never called each other co-founders. We never called this a company. It was just a project and we were just building community. So it came out all naturally.
Okay. Tony, when you build a project on social media, people are not going to pay you for subscription. Having said that, how are you managing the funds? Are you funded externally, or how is it?
Okay, we are bootstrapped venture. As I said, we didn't start out to build a company. So no thoughts about money or stuff like that. And I think when we were doing events, we were making enough money to cover the expenses. I think at some point, I mean, I did some mistakes in managing the funds early on. But even after that, around January, we were almost making 95% of our expenses. So you're covering our expenses till 95% through revenue, and only 5% was our burn rate. And I think that's when COVID struck, and February the event started happening less and less. People started coming in less and less, and then till March and April, I think everything was gone and dead. We just stopped doing our events. So that was a problem. Otherwise, we would have been like not profitable, but enough to cover our expenses and to ensure that we are building the platform and then ask for investment for that. Um, so no outside investments up till now, and we've been very very lean. We've done very lean operations. COVID helped us build a remote team, so our company is entirely remote right now. No offices at all. We had an office earlier on, but that was closed down. So having a remote team, I think, is really great to save money in the beginning. Don't open offices or don't even register your company until you're very sure you want some outside investment, until you're very sure that you have a steady stream of revenue.
Okay. Now, since you have mentioned that you have hired people and built a team together. In fact, I checked your LinkedIn. I believe almost 50 people are working with you. Having said
Yeah.
that, I'd like to know how do you recruit people? What is the method you follow to bring on new people on board? And what exactly you look in a person when you take them on board?
Okay. I handle HR of my company. I handle the human resources thing. It's very hard to say what we look exactly. I mean, of course, we have like a list of ideal qualities. I think these are 10 or 11 qualities. We actually have written a blog. You can check it out on Google. What do we look in our candidates? It's generally a mixture of problem solving. It's a mixture of curiosity. It's very important. A mixture of learning abilities and very fast learners. Somebody who can explore the world, experiment with ideas, all that stuff. Well, very usual stuff, but I think for a startup, one of the most important things when you are hiring is that don't hire somebody you would not like to be friends with. That's a very important aspect because you're going to be working with them for a long time, and everybody in the company is going to work with each other for a very long time. So apart from technical skills, which is of course very mandatory, I think you should look and have a conversation with the person long enough to understand whether you'd like to be friends with them. If they have something similar with you, if they have the same mindset, they're also problem solvers, they're also curious about things, and that's a good match. And the 50 people that you were talking about, we did have a couple of full-time people, but as COVID came and we had to basically strip down our operations to bare minimum, we had to let go of our full-time employees, and now we are completely dependent on a team of interns. Um, and there is this, as a startup, you would make mistakes in hiring. So you have to be prepared to fire a lot of people. And we do fire a lot of people. Like for every 50 people, I think if we are hiring 50 people or 100 people, I think we would be hiring 20%, firing 20% of them. And that's very necessary. And that's also very low. We should probably fire more people. That's because it's not just that that person is not performing or is not right for the team. You are probably not the right company for them. That's a very important fact as well. Some people are really great, really skillful, but in the environment you have inside your company, they might not be the perfect people. So every human being has different priorities, and they have different ways of working. So you have to ensure that the matchmaking happens at that level as well. That you are the right company for those people, and those people are the right people for your company.
I think that is an interesting perspective you said. Let's play a short rapid fire round. I'd give you two questions, in fact, two words to choose from, and you have to go ahead with one of them, right? You have to choose between two words.
All right.
So, ethics versus growth,
Growth,
micromanagement versus freedom,
freedom,
single founder versus multiple founders,
Multiple all the way.
Vision versus execution.
Execution.
Hire and fire versus slow progress.
Hire and fire.
I believe you already answered that before.
Yes.
Sustainability versus profitability.
I think both of them go hand in hand. I would choose sustainability. That sounds a little better.
Short-term goals versus long-term goals.
Both of them again, short term, short goals, long term, long goals.
But you have to choose one of them.
I think long term goals, yeah.
Bootstrap versus external funding.
External funding. Again, that depends, but
Quality versus quantity.
quality.
Reliability versus performance.
Reliability.
Okay, I'm done with the rapid fire. Uh, Now, I'd like to know what are the challenges you have faced so far while building and growing this venture.
I think our biggest competition was COVID itself. We were doing physical events in three different cities. So I think COVID was the biggest challenge. I think it would be the biggest challenge for any company that started in 2019 or around in 2020. I think that was the biggest challenge. Second biggest challenge would be to understand what we are going to do. As I said, we didn't start with a very specific idea, so it took us a lot of time to figure things out of what we really want to do, what we really want to build. And I think building a tech team also is a challenging task. So it took us some time to figure out how to settle things up in the tech team, how to build a good product line or pipeline, and how to design and deploy your product very fast.
Okay. Uh, Now we are very short of time. I just have two questions for you. Tell us what has been your learning throughout your journey as an entrepreneur, uh, and share us those learnings so that it can shorten the learning curve of other entrepreneurs.
Alright. If you're short on time, I'll give out some bullet points. Everybody who's going to pitch to startups, bullet points is something you should love. Um, So I'll give you some pointers. Do not register, as I said earlier, do not register your company as a private limited or a partnership or LLP, whatever it is, until you're very, very sure you need an external funding. If you require nothing like those things, nothing external funding, nothing to convince you that you need a company, don't register one because it has very fixed costs that do not go away even if things are not working out, right? And second thing is that you should be very, very, very lean in the beginning. Do not hire anybody else until you probably have to wake up till 2 o'clock in the night to do your work. All right. Not until you are completely exhausted by the work do you need a helping hand. So try to be as lean as possible. Ensure only the co-founders are working for maximum time possible until you have something called product market fit. Google that, very important. And again, product market fit. Do not expand or go towards growth until you have product market fit. Until you know for sure that there are people, a sizable amount of people out there who actually need your product very badly, and that you have built the perfect product for them. All right. So do that a lot. And one last thing, while you are building your product, start from a very lean product, the MVP version, make it as lean as possible. So we started our MVP version would be the community and the events we built, which was zero cost operationally, and we actually earned money from our communities and events. So that's something really, really great if you can do that. Increases your sustainability. And only once you're convinced that yes, this is something you should build and you should go forward with, that's when you should start spending in technology. Because once you start spending in technology, it's a very slow and long process. And that is the kind of investment that doesn't necessarily come back or very easily come back. Because while you're building a product, it takes a long time to monetize that product. So make sure that you have very, very lean operations and very, very lean product development in the beginning.
Hmm. Tony, I think you answered my second question as well in this answer. I don't have any further question for you. But is there anything you want to say? You want to share with our audience, but you couldn't because of my questions? You can share with us.
Um, if you are going to be an entrepreneur, I would highly suggest to not build your startup. I think this has been said by Paul Graham, I think, of Y Combinator, or by somebody I don't remember. But there are enough startups already out there. The only thing that is missing is that most of them are failing and not succeeding. So you've got to join other people in helping them build their dreams. This is very counterintuitive for entrepreneurs because they want to build their own thing. They want that kind of freedom. But like when you're trying to help other people build something, and especially when you're very young, if you are so, I started this company when I was 19, right? So if you're very young and you're starting very early on in the process, do not build your own thing. Just explore out there. If you know somebody who's building a startup, or if you just have known a lot of startups, like go to the founders, type them out a mail, or send a connection request to them on LinkedIn and ask them if they need any help in their startup, right? Become their co-founders, become somebody else's co-founder. Do not recruit your own co-founders and help them build that, because a general startup would require what, 4 or 5 years of help. Once you have helped them out for 4 or 5 years, once you have matured through that time period, you basically invested in somebody else and it was their 100% risk, but you had only learnings to do. So you spent 4 or 5 years of good amount of time in learning how to build a company. And now when you are 24, 25, or 26, you have enough experience and enough knowledge of how to build a startup. That's when you should start building your own thing. I did a mistake. I started my own company, but looking back, if I had known this 2 years ago, I wouldn't have started this, and I would have 100% helped somebody else build a business, which can be of similar industry. So you can easily find those things and try that. Try helping the ecosystem, the community, and then once you are ready, they'll probably give you back as well.
I think that was a great message, and in fact, a key takeaway from this whole conversation for me as well, that if you help others in building their ventures, you get your learnings, but you don't take the risk. Very interesting. I would like to thank you, Tony, for taking out time and joining this session. It was a great pleasure to host you. I wish best for the social media platform you're building. Best wishes for coming up. Listeners, you can follow and connect with Tony on LinkedIn by typing Tony Sheldon. Do join their network and may you find the right person you are looking for. Uh, that is it for today's episode. We'll be back with another exciting entrepreneur. Stay tuned to ELI.